Good evening once again. It's Monday, it's 8 o'clock, and it's time for the Monday Review Show. This is where we discuss all things refereeing and referees, of course. If you'd like to send a comment or ask a question, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm delighted to be joined again, albeit belatedly, Keith. You're having a bit of bother on that side. Technology, yeah. But thanks very much for joining us again on the review show. Just to repeat once again, if you'd like to make a comment or send in a comment or ask a question, you're more than welcome to do so. There's a little thing just down on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, and you can put your comments in there. Kate, not much really happening over this last week. I know we've had international games, and more seems to be happening when there are Premier League games rather than international games. But one thing is really exercising the people, and I want to say hello to my very, very, very good friend. He was the referee for my very first line in South Africa, Stan Swart. Wow. He's here visiting his family in Greystones in County Wicklow. Stan, you're very welcome to the show. I know you're a regular listener, and thanks for looking in, and it's great to have you on board. But the issue we mentioned last week about the ball not being in the right position at the taking of a free kick, albeit, and even though it's a quick free kick, still has to be in the right position.
Yeah.
In this instance, the ball was at least 10 yards or 10 meters, whichever way, in old money, 10 yards from where the incident occurred, which was disputed, of course, by the opposition. This was the MTN Cup final, which was held last week in South Africa. Do you want to expand a little bit on that, Keith, about the ball being in the right position and what the referee should have done?
Well, I think what we have to ensure as referees that the law is actually carried out. The law is clear that the retake for a free kick is in proximity to where the incident took place. It's basic refereeing. And, you know, I know there's pressure on the referee to play advantage and keep the game flowing, all those things. But the principle that I was always taught by the elders, if you like, referees that were much older than I at the time, was manage the ball. That doesn't mean to have the ball in your hands, but when you blow that whistle, mentally determine where that incident took place and think about the restart always. And the restart has to be that process. And referees in their development should always think about the process. Let's take a throw-in. You know, I think be proactive on the position. I used to go opposite to where the ball had left the field of play. And as the player was retrieving the ball, I'd make it quite clear as soon as he gets anywhere near, I would say, this is where I want you. And I would put my arm out horizontal to the touchline to say, this is where, or at 90 degrees to the touchline, this is where I want you to take the throw. Now, I know that we're liberal. I know that we can allow a meter or two. But, you know, if you take a proactive approach and say, this is where it needs to be, this is where the ball needs to be at the free kick. Look, when we award a free kick, a penalty kick, what is the referee doing hovering over the ball? He's making certain that the ball is in the correct position in order to satisfy law at the taking of a penalty kick. This is no different. And I think that it was a long distance away from where the actual incident took place. And, you know, at the professional level, it's easier than grassroots, because at a professional level, we've got advertising hoardings around the perimeter of the pitch. And all we've got to do is look at where the ad is on the perimeter board, and that gives us a position. You know, these are small things that can help you in terms of getting the datum point as where the kick should be retaked. And of course, the ball has to be stationary.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and
yeah.
so it's basic refereeing. There should be no confusion on this one. The kick was taken some distance. You're right, 10 yards. That's just not acceptable in any level of football.
So on that issue, Keith, and in another area, can't think of the right word, but from throw-ins, players constantly stealing yards. I mean, 10 yards, sometimes more. It's this sort of attempt to throw the ball in another few steps, and then he turns around, and then there's another few steps all the time going forward. It's a bit of a rhetorical question, but why aren't referees clamping down on it?
Well, I think it's just sloppy refereeing. You know, I mean, I look at a lot of officials and they forget the basics. You know, we can argue. I mean, I've been searching. You know, a colleague over in Florida sent me a note, Mike Shelley, and he's a colleague who's been an official. He knows the game inside out, and he asked me a question: where is it in the laws of the game that says anything other than the ball has to be in the quadrant? And again, this is another area where we've seen this. It's got to be in contact with the line, or you know, and we're looking down the sphere on a flat surface. The answer is this is how you manage the game. And if you know, you don't have to be petty, but basic refereeing, this is where I want the throw-in to be taken, gets them into the discipline. Because, you know, if you allow one or two to go and then you start stopping it, they're going to say, well, you've been unfair. You allowed the opposition to take a throw-in from the incorrect position. Why are you penalising me, referee?
So here's another issue.
Yeah, this is where you want to throw in.
If we insist that a player takes a throw-in from where the ball left the field of play, if they change the throw-in to an indirect free kick, then it would surely be taken from the correct position.
Yeah, I think that we've actually looked at law changes. You know, we had that nonsense of a defender standing on the thrower, preventing him throwing the ball, or the thrower actually following through and almost clashing with the opposition. So they said, right, you've got to be 2 yards away from the ball to allow the freedom of the thrower to take the throw in. I think you're right. I think that when the lawmakers come in, and I think over the recent years, some of the changes have been poor. You know, because they make the law and then they issue a glossary. This is a glossary that is supposed to help a referee, but people read the laws of the game. They don't read the glossary. You know, I've been looking at holding because it continues to worry me. And this is the advice that they're giving to referees. Holding is a continued area of emphasis, and situations will be penalised when it's sustained and has a clear impact on the opponent's opportunity to play or challenge for the ball, including those non-footballing actions. What to look for? Both arms is usually an offence unless it's not sustained or no clear impact. What are you doing?
God, Keith. What the hell is that?
One arm is usually an offence if clear impact. I mean, I'm going, oh, are we in Noddyland here? You know, has Disney written this? Mutual holding is usually no offence. Huh? Penalise one. I mean, I look at it, Errol, and I look at some of our referees. I mean, I was on Radio Manchester this evening because a manager of Salford has gone ballistic with the referee, a young referee, and he's actually really annoyed with his performance throughout. And the interviewer said, well, what's the process? And I said, well, it's dead simple. 30 minutes after the game, if the manager has the right approach, he can go into the dressing room at the behest of the referee. If it's not the right approach, the referee can say, get lost. And he can have a debate. He can seek clarification. If he's still not happy, then if he produces the DVD of the incidents that he is moaning around, rather than being general and having an overall moan, be specific, then the PGMOL, to either Howard Webb or Mike Jones, who runs the national list, will deal with it. So when we get to throw-ins and basic law, it's got to be within a reasonable point at where the ball crossed the line. You and I are not going to say on this postage stamp, this is where you take it. But we need to be proactive in saying, this is where I want it. And then the other thing is, what referees are not looking out for now is the long throws that penetrates into the penalty area. And you think, my God, this guy's had his Weetabix or porridge oats or even Popeye spinach, because he lands the ball so comfortably. But when you look the second time, it's a one-handed throw that's completely illegal. And these are the small points that referees have to look out for. They're things that if I was the match assessor, these are things that I would be pointing out. Don't give the match assessor the opportunity. You don't have to be pedantic. Tell the player where you want to throw in. If he doesn't respond, then penalise him.
So just on one final issue on that, there's a couple of more points I want to talk about. Penalty kicks. I mean, the penalty spot is the 9-inch diameter. Now, if that ball is forward 9 inches, that the outer casing is just touching, surely then I'm being very pedantic now, Keith. Okay, I'm being very silly now. Surely he's less than 10 yards from the goal.
Yes.
I
think that what the IFAB are doing is they're thinking about trying to make the life of a referee easier, and in fact, they're making it more difficult. I get the impression that sitting on the board at the IFAB, the weight of change is coming from the playing side, not the refereeing side. You know, I looked this week, and on the IFAB now is Howard Webb, David Ellery, Wooly Cullen, and Mike Riley, because he's Northern Ireland.
And that's the only reason he went there, Keith.
That's why he's on the IFAB. And these guys, instead of having a couple of days out somewhere nice and being entertained, they have to be the guardians of the laws of the game, and they've got to get the message across. And the laws of the game, we've got to get back to being specific and less latitude in the laws for misinterpretation.
It's so, okay. It's so frustrating, really, sometimes. There was a big hoo-ha and a big hullabaloo and a big announcement, blah, blah, blah. Captains only will talk to the referees. Does that not apply in the Premier League?
No. And this is, I think this is the weakness of the PGMOL. You know, the PGMOL need to be setting the scene, not the Premier League. You know, I mean, look, we were promised, can you remember, after the international break, the first international break, we would have the semi-automated offside system. Well, I doubted that. Because, you know, my people are saying to me, my contacts, they're not going to use Sony cameras, Keith, that's used in the World Cup and in Euros. They're going to go for Apple. And And what about the ball and the chip in the ball? Because that was developed with Adidas, and the Premier League used Nike. So there lies some difficulty. And I think that when we actually look at, are the referees being bought off? Is the PGMOL being bought off? Because they're now spending £33 million. It's a big figure. I was spending 5 million. I know pension and I know other things, but you know, I defended a young referee tonight on radio, and it's pretty evident the manager was very unhappy with his refereeing and the standard of refereeing at League Two level. And that's a worry.
Yeah, too many. I call them soccer politicians. They're no worse than the normal politicians. They get involved in something, and it just seems it makes the situation worse. John Major, Prime Minister. Sorry, John Major, Prime Minister, said one time, "It's time to get back to basics."
Yeah, and I think that, you know, what we're failing to recognise here is that when there is that overall national criticism of the standard of officiating of Premier League referees, and, you know, I'm a former referee, you are, we don't want to be berating referees, but when they are making such big errors on law at the very highest level, with all the technology that's going, the communication link between the assistant referees, the VAR, you know, the fourth official, you know, when you actually look at that referee in the local park, where he's got a couple of club linesmen and he's trying to interpret this offside, every time the ball strikes someone's arm, he's having to deal with the shouts and calls of handball. You know, these guys who are making these laws and these guys at the top level that are officiating games have a responsibility to our referees at grassroots level. And the lawmakers have a responsibility at grassroots level. Because, you know, the interpretation of handball, they can't get it right at the elite level. So what pressure does that put on a young referee who's pacing up and down the pitch under a degree of pressure because he's got 100 parents or more stood round the perimeter of the pitch looking for every problem?
Yeah,
and I think
most times probably operating without assistance. Where
correct.
are the guys in the morning?
It's a tough environment now as a young referee coming through, even as a mature referee. And all I want to say is, look, be as efficient as possible, and look after yourself, and do your best. And you know, I've seen some recent assessments of referees, and I've smiled because, you know, the mark is a good mark. The comments from the assessors is very valuable and very positive. And I think they're preparing our referees for the future. And some of our younger referees want to aspire to the top, but they want to go into an environment that is safe and friendly, and they're treated like professionals at the top level. You know, but the demands are, you know, I mean, I watched a referee officiate at the weekend, and he was moving around the field with ease. He was fit, mobile. His quality of decision making was excellent. His signaling was good. His body language was positive. And you say, this is what makes me happy, because this is what I want to see. I want to see referees who are enjoying officiating, giving of their best, and for the crowd to be a little bit more forgiving when there's the possibility of a handball or there's the possibility of an offside, you know. And I think sometimes, the criticism is unfounded.
Yeah, and of course, crowds are very unforgiving and unforgiven, or given, very unforgiving, and they don't care. And you might get it's even worse, Keith, when you get a teenager as a referee, and he's out there doing a game of maybe under 10s, under 12s, something like that, and he's getting blasted from all sides. I mean, and he may most likely be on his own without assistance. So he's doing the best he can, particularly on offsides, and they have very little sympathy for that, parents.
Yeah, I mean, everybody thinks that they know the offside law, but in truth, it's so complicated. It's not a simple law. It's not. I hear the shouts regularly because a player is in an offside position. Then everybody thinks that's offside, and and they don't realise the point. Is that player active? Is he interfering with an opponent? And has there been a deliberate play?
Yeah,
and
of course, an offence to be in an offside position.
Yeah, and these are the complications that a lot of spectators don't understand. They see a player stood in an offside position anywhere on that forward line, and they think he should be penalised. Well, that's back to our days when we started refereeing. The 60s. The laws become more sophisticated and more complicated, and we get it wrong at the elite level. Think of the pressure on the young referee or the referee at grassroots level, trying to determine accurately as he can, an offside decision.
And a lot of the times, the guys at the elite level, the Premier League level, are role models for these younger guys. So they're looking at them and they're perhaps imitating, copying, trying to do what they're doing. And all the time it may be wrong. And they'll go out on a Sunday morning themselves and they'll do what they saw at a Premier League match. And all the time it may not be correct.
Yeah, I mean, what you can look at in terms of the elite referees is usually their movement and their positioning, and the importance of explosive sprinting in the modern world of refereeing. Those short bursts that get you 3 or 4 meters very quickly at 7 meters per second. How that training regime has to meet that requirement, because instead of in our day doing 15 to 20 sprints in a game, it's now 50 sprints in a game. And because of players have become more skillful, they've become more adept, and sadly they're also learning about cheating at the highest level, and players falling over, and I think this makes very difficult. I mean, my own club, we had a player dismissed, 2 players came together, and the referee decided he'd seen a headbutt. I ain't got a clue, so I'm not commenting on that. The outcome was a difficulty for the match official. The delay in the player leaving the field of play, the comments from the spectators, the part surrounding of the referee. He's only seen it once, and he's made a judgment. And then, of course, is he right? Is he wrong? The questions are asked, but I always say, where was he? And if he's in proximity to play, he's less, if you like, vulnerable to getting it wrong.
Yeah. So the captain's only thing has not come into the Premier League, where the captain only can speak to the referee. Then the time added on, Keith, as we saw at the recent World Cup, 10, 14 minutes added on. That's gone by the wayside as well.
Well, 6-week myth, isn't it? We have it every year. What's going to be the on the menu? It's almost like saying mushroom soup's on the menu every year, and then all of a sudden, all the customers love it, and now we're having tomato soup, but it's only on for 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, like, we know that these clampdowns, and the players and the managers know that these clampdowns, or whatever you want to call them, it's actually applying the law correctly and making a judgment. But we learned that the IFAB are carrying out an experiment now. It's 8 seconds maybe when the goalkeeper is going to be penalised, and you look at these things and you go, why don't we just stick to 6 seconds? Somebody had a brave thought way back and put 6 seconds on it. So why are we actually changing the law because referees are not applying it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Keith. And by the way, it's sometimes 15, 20 seconds before the keeper releases them, and they're not being penalised.
I look at it. I mean, it's like the confusion of triple jeopardy. People now think that if a goalkeeper brings a player down outside the penalty area and is denied an opponent, that should be a yellow card. I heard it a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sat there saying, no, triple jeopardy, that terminology is inside the area, and inside the area, if the goalkeeper makes a genuine attempt to play the ball, that's fine. Outside the penalty area, he's now a normal player.
Correct, yeah, because he's not allowed to handle the ball, of course, yeah.
He can't handle the ball, and if he makes a foul challenge and he's denied an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, he's off.
Yeah.
And these are, if you like, areas of the law where these changes have been made over the years, and they further complicate it for the spectator.
Do you think now there's a reluctance by some referees not only to issue yellow cards but red cards?
The number of times we see a cheap yellow and then a second yellow, which should be a red, and the referee ducks it.
Mm-hmm.
Surely
they should get their backside.
We saw this, didn't we? In a game recently before the international break.
Yeah,
I think it was Chris Kavanagh gave what might be a cheap yellow and then ducked it, giving a second yellow to the Liverpool player who should have walked.
Yeah,
and you go, you can't do that.
See, so I wonder why. Are they under pressure from the league not to give red cards, or the league managers?
Well, I think that it seems to me, with an average of 5 yellow cards per game, running through the game at all levels generally, now, the consequence of that is automatically red cards will go up. And of course, what happens is, instead of giving that straight red, often the referee will give another yellow as the means of sending off because there's no right of appeal.
But that's not the referee's concern.
Absolutely not.
That's the players and the clubs. They need to manage that situation. If the player's got a yellow card and there's a danger of him getting another one, then he gets substituted, as happened to Marcus Rashford recently.
Correct. That's good management, isn't it?
He really bottled it. He should have got a second yellow.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one. I was trying to think that's the one I'm referring to.
Yeah. Keith, once again, thank you very much. We had a few gremlins in the system earlier on, but delighted to have you on the show once again. And
Pleasure.
Thank you for watching. And we'll do it all again next Monday. Until then, good night and God bless. Thank you. Thanks.
Good night. Thanks.